The admissions committee of the Zenith Combat Institute had processed 847,923 applications that cycle. In a galaxy of trillions, only 300 slots opened each standard year. The competition was brutal, mathematical, and utterly unforgiving. Species from 400 worlds sent their finest warriors, their genetically optimized soldiers, their cybernetically enhanced champions. Elsa Martinez's application should never have made it past the first algorithmic screening. The error occurred at 3:47 Galactic Standard Time when a solar flare from Kepler 442's star caused a microscopic bit flip in the quantum processing core of the admissions. AI for exactly 1.3 nanoseconds. The system misread her species designation. Instead of flagging Human Death World Class 7, prohibited entry, it registered Harani Grace World Class 2, approved for consideration. By the time the system's error correction protocols caught the mistake, Elsa's acceptance letter had already been transmitted. Via Takin burst to Earth. Galactic law was absolute. Once an acceptance was issued and received, it could not be rescinded without cause. The Institute's legal team spent 48 hours examining every clause, every subsection, every precedent. They found nothing. Elsa Martinez, a 17-year-old human from Denver, Colorado, was officially enrolled in the most prestigious military academy in known space. Harry Keshnarok stood at attention in the main assembly hall, his forearms crossed in the traditional Vrathari posture of skeptical observation. At 3 meters tall with exoskeletal armor that could deflect plasma rounds and muscles capable of generating 40,000 newtons of force, he was considered one of the finest cadets in his cohort. His people had bred warriors for 16,000 years. Combat was encoded in their DNA. The human was late. "This is unprecedented," muttered Felix, a crystalline Litharian whose body refracted light into dazzling patterns. His species communicated through controlled photon emissions and possessed reaction times measured in picoseconds. A Deathworlder in the Institute. What were the administrators thinking? "They weren't thinking," Harry replied, his translator chip converting his subsonic vocalizations into galactic standard. "It was a system error. The question is what happens when she arrives and realizes she's in over her head." The massive doors of the assembly hall dilated open with a pneumatic hiss. Elsa Martinez walked through. She was small, catastrophically small by galactic standards. At 1.65 meters and 58 kilograms, she looked like something that belonged in a nursery, not a combat academy. Her skin was pale, her frame appeared fragile, and she wore the standard-issue cadet uniform that seemed comically oversized on her slight build. Harry felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Pity. The girl's eyes swept across the assembly hall, taking in the 299 cadets who represented the apex predators of their respective species. Thrak warriors with acid for blood. Kelvorian berserkers with redundant nervous systems. Sialeth mentalists who could crush rocks with thought alone. Elsa smiled. It wasn't a nervous smile or an uncertain one. It was the smile of someone who had just walked into exactly where they belonged. "Attention." Commander Zareth's voice boomed through the hall. The Archon Administrator was a being of pure energy contained within a magnetic field matrix, a species that had transcended physical form 3 million years ago. Cadet Martinez, front and center. Elsa walked forward with an easy, confident gait. Harry noticed something odd about her movement. It was economical, efficient, with no wasted energy. Her breathing was controlled, her posture relaxed but ready. "Cadet Martinez," Zyrith said, his energy matrix pulsing with what might have been curiosity or concern. "You are aware that you are the first human to ever attend this institution?" "Yes, Commander." "You are aware that the physical standards here are designed for species that evolved in high-gravity, high-danger environments? Species that possess natural weapons, armor, or extraordinary abilities?" "Yes, Commander." "And you still wish to proceed with your enrollment?" Elsa's smile widened slightly. "Commander, my planet has a gravity of 9.8 meters per second squared. An atmosphere that's 21% oxidizing gas, temperature swings of 100 degrees Celsius, and we share our environment with microorganisms that actively try to kill us every single day. We call it Earth. You call it a Class 7 death world. I've been training my whole life for this. A ripple of what might have been amusement or disbelief passed through the assembled cadets. Very well, Zyrith said. Report to barracks designation Theta 7. Orientation begins at 0600 tomorrow. Dismissed. Harry found himself assigned as Elsa's squad leader for the first training cycle. It was, he suspected, a deliberate decision by the administration, either to ensure her safety or to document her inevitable failure. The first morning began with what the instructors called a light warm-up, a 20-kilometer run through the Academy's gravity-enhanced training grounds. The artificial gravity plates were set to 1.5 standard G roughly, 14.7 meters per second squared. For species that evolved on low-gravity worlds, it was torture. For warriors like Harry, it was routine. For Elsa, it should have been impossible. Harry set a moderate pace, expecting to circle back and find the human collapse somewhere around the 5-kilometer mark. Instead, when he glanced over his shoulder at the 15-kilometer point, she was still there. Not just there, she was maintaining pace, her breathing controlled and rhythmic. By the time they completed the circuit, Elsa finished in the top third of the class. How? Felix asked, his crystalline structure flickering with confusion. Your bone density should be insufficient for this gravitational load. Your cardiovascular system should be failing. Elsa unscrewed her water container and took a long drink before answering. Humans are persistence hunters. On Earth, we used to chase animals until they collapsed from exhaustion. We're not the fastest or the strongest, but we don't stop. Ever. She gestured at the training ground. This is just a Tuesday for me back home. Harry filed that information away. The combat trials began in week 2. The Institute's philosophy was simple. Every cadet must prove they can survive against every threat. The sparring rings were equipped with medical nanites that could heal anything short of complete molecular disruption, which meant instructors encouraged full contact. No holds-barred combat. Elsa's first match was against a Corvina, reptilian species with scales harder than ceramic, composite, and a tail that could shatter reinforced steel. The betting pool gave her less than 30 seconds. Harry watched from the observation deck as the two cadets entered the ring. The Corvan was nearly twice Elsa's height and probably 6 times her mass. His name was Vexilor, and he had never lost a match. The signal chimed. Vexilor charged. What happened next would be analyzed in tactical classes for the next decade. Elsa didn't retreat or try to dodge. Instead, she moved forward at an angle, closing the distance in a way that seemed suicidal. The Corvan's clawed hand swept toward her head with enough force to decapitate a Thrak warrior. Elsa wasn't there. She had dropped into a slide, passing under his guard, and as she moved, her fist drove upward into the soft tissue under Vexilor's jaw where the scales were thinnest. The punch was augmented by her momentum, her body weight, and something Harry would later learn was called kinetic chain optimization, a way of channeling energy from the ground, through the legs, core, and shoulder, into a single devastating point. Vexilor's head snapped back. Before he could recover, Elsa was on him. Her knee found his solar plexus. Her elbow struck the nerve cluster at the base of his skull. Her foot swept his legs. The Corvan hit the mat. 5 strikes. 3 seconds. The entire arena was silent. Vexilor tried to rise, confusion evident in his predatory eyes. Elsa stepped back, hands raised, signaling she was done. Combat end, the referee announced. Winner, Cadet Martinez. Harry felt his secondary hearts accelerate. That shouldn't have been possible. Vexilor was a trained warrior. He had reflexes, armor, mass advantage. And yet the human had taken him apart like a training drone over the following weeks. Elsa's reputation grew. She defeated a Calvorian in hand-to-hand combat by exploiting the 3-millisecond delay in his redundant nervous system. She outmaneuvered a Thrak by using the carbon dioxide in her breath to temporarily overload its chemical sensors. She beat a Sciolleth mentalist by maintaining such intense focus on physical pain self-inflicted by biting her own tongue that the psychic couldn't establish a mental link. The other cadets started calling her the ghost because of how she seemed to anticipate attacks before they came. Harry finally asked her about it during a tactical planning session. How do you do it? He said, all four of his eyes focused on her. We're bigger, faster, stronger. We have natural weapons. You have none of those advantages, so how? Elsa looked up from the holographic battlefield they'd been studying. You ever hear of persistence hunting, Harry? You mentioned it during the run. Right, but it's more than just endurance. Humans don't have claws or venom or armor. We don't have exoskeletons or redundant organs. What we have is pattern recognition and adaptability. We can track an animal for days by reading broken twigs and disturbed dirt. We can predict where it's going, what it's thinking. She pointed to the hologram. Every species has patterns. Vrathri always lead with their dominant right arms. Corvins overcommit to their initial charge. Lotharians rely too heavily on their speed and don't expect counterattacks within their reaction window. You all evolved to be perfect hunters or warriors in your environments. That makes you predictable. And humans? We evolved to hunt everything. We learn to read, adapt, and outlast. You're all specialists. I'm a generalist. That's my advantage. Harry felt a strange emotion, something his translator chip couldn't quite name. It might have been respect. The final examination came at the end of the first year. The gauntlet. Every cadet would face a simulated combat scenario designed by the Institute's AI to exploit their specific weaknesses. The AI had 600 years of tactical data and could generate opponents that countered every known strategy. No one had ever achieved a perfect score. Dalsa entered the simulation chamber alone. Harry watched through the observation feed with the rest of their cohort. The scenario loaded. A multi-level urban environment filled with adaptive drones programmed with the combat styles of 50 different species. The objective was simple: survive for 20 minutes. The simulation began. The drones came at her from all angles, flying, crawling, leaping. Each one was designed to test a different aspect of combat: speed, strength, tactics, endurance. Elsa moved through them like water. She used the environment, turning corners into choke points, using debris as weapons, exploiting the drone's programming against them. When a heavy assault drone cornered her, she collapsed a support beam onto it. When speed drones tried to overwhelm her, she led them into a kill zone and eliminated them with a captured weapon. At the 15-minute mark, the AI did something unprecedented. It adapted. The drones stopped following predictable patterns. They began coordinating in ways that suggested true intelligence rather than programming. Elsa adapted faster. She changed tactics every 30 seconds, never allowing the AI to model her behavior. She used aggression, then retreat, then misdirection. She fought, ran, hid, and ambushed in a sequence that seemed random but was actually carefully calculated chaos. At 20 minutes, the simulation ended. Elsa stood in the center of the chamber, breathing hard but standing. Around her lay the deactivated remains of 147 drones. The AIS analysis appeared on the display. Opponent behavioral modeling failed. Tactical prediction accuracy 23%. Combat effectiveness rating exceptional. Commander Xerath's energy matrix pulsed bright with what might have been amazement. Cadet Martinez, he said, in 600 years of operation, you are the first to ever prevent the simulation AI from successfully modeling your combat behavior. Explain. Elsa wiped sweat from her forehead and grinned. Humans are really good at being unpredictable, Commander. We call it creativity. Graduation came 4 years later. Elsa Martinez finished rank 7th in her class overall. But first in tactical innovation, adaptive combat, and what the Institute called probability-defying survival scenarios. Harry Keshnarak, who finished 3rd, stood beside her at the ceremony as they received their commissions. You know, Harry said quietly, when you first arrived, I thought you'd be gone within a week. I know, Elsa replied. Everyone did. What made you so confident? Elsa looked out at the assembled graduates warriors from hundreds of worlds, each one a legend on their own planet. You want to know the secret of humanity, Harry? The reason we survived on a death world while everything else tried to kill us? Yes, we're too stubborn to quit. We're too curious to stop learning. And we're too crazy to know when we're outmatched. She smiled at him. The admissions AI made an error accepting me. But the galaxy is about to learn that humans don't become dangerous because we're strong. We become dangerous because we refuse to stay down. Harry looked at his friend, a small, fragile creature from a nightmare world, and felt his translator chip finally identify the emotion he'd been experiencing. Pride. Galaxy had accepted Elsa Martinez by error, but she had proven that sometimes the most dangerous thing in the universe wasn't what you expected, it was what you underestimated, and humanity, Harry was beginning to realize, had been underestimated for far too long. End.